I often wonder how many people look at their children and ponder as I do. Like looking at the eye of a storm that bears the name of uncertainty. Watching my son and nephew playing, I find myself reflecting on the past and remembering what it was like to be their age. Combing through my mental catalog of experiences, and then realizing a certain core memory that they would never share. Grandfathers. I'm reminded that some stories are the bridges to those that we've loved and lost. I had an idea while I was telling my boys about tall tales. Through these tall tales, their grandfathers can become larger than life heroes who can offer them a guiding light while giving them a chance to learn who they were and why they were important to us all. Where did this all begin? With a cloth patch. Not just any cloth patch. This one had history. It was a 1st Cavalry Division patch my stepfather Anthony had given me when I was much younger. I didn't realize it at the time, but that patch had gone halfway around the world. Twice. And through war. A war that many of us Americans are vaguely familiar with. Vietnam. Judge not a person by the actions that circumstances forced upon them, but by the character they revealed in the face of those trials. Here's what I know. Anthony Andrew Moore was born July 17th, 1952, in Asheville, North Carolina. He had told me that he had gotten into some serious legal trouble when he was around 18 years old. The court gave him the ultimatum that many young men at the time were given: go to war or go to jail. This is when he decided to join the U.S. Army and become an infantryman. He was also selected to attend airborne school. Now, for the uninitiated, airborne school ain't no joke. Basic training, even infantry combat training, is tough. Airborne training was completely voluntary, but to become one of the deadliest airborne units in the world, peak physical fitness and mental awareness were the key difference from falling and landing. To describe the sudden and overwhelming force deployed by the 101st Airborne, they fall on them like a thunderbolt from the skies. As far as what he did in Vietnam, he never got into specifics. He would tell funny and entertaining stories about how he was stalked by a tiger in the jungle or about trying psychedelics and tripping balls while on patrol. But he never talked about the things he had to do to survive, the situations he was put in that my mother would share with me years later. I remember he gave me this dingy yellow patch around the time I finished my training in the military. I knew it was important to me, but I had no idea how important it would be. I hadn't given that patch much thought until recently, when my mom showed me a toy that she got in the boys for Christmas. It was one of those make believe sets that comes with all the different accessories, a soldier set. And there it was, that bright yellow shield bearing the silhouette of a horse head and a diagonal line jumping out of that dull gray armor. I became excited to show my son the patch that his grandfather had worn, and then I realized I didn't remember where it was. First chance that I got, I began looking everywhere I thought it could be. I was tearing my house apart like an IRS agent looking for an unfiled deductible. But after feeling like I had exhausted all of my options, I had to finally call it quits. It was driving me crazy to think I would misplace something that I valued as a prized possession. I had to focus my efforts elsewhere, and so began my research, which hit a dead end pretty quickly. I didn't have much to work with from the start, so most of my formal research was stifled early on. I was able to get his social security number, driver's license, and birth certificate, but this information would only get me so far. The records I needed have to be requested through the National Archives, DD 214, as well as his official military personnel file, the OMPF. These would give me much clearer details about his service. And I realized I may have inadvertently picked the worst time to do this research. Being in the middle of the longest government shutdown in American history didn't help. I have friends in the VA, but they were all on furlough and unable to help in any kind of way. Even NARA, the National Archives and Records Administration, was affected. This is the only place I can obtain any kind of official records and confirm any of the stories that I heard. Even reaching out to family members proved more challenging than I even expected. His siblings had not been in contact with my immediate family for some time. I gathered last known phone numbers and made a few calls. My wife helped me do some investigating and found a few possible current numbers. Eventually, we found my stepbrother's information, and still no answers. I expanded my search into more public domains. Looking through any possible records with the mention of his name, a single needle in the haystack that is the internet. I was beginning to feel like this whole endeavor was a waste of time, but I reminded myself that these setbacks are only temporary. The government shutdown was coming to a close with the passing of a new spending bill, and all that was left to do was wait. Eventually, my stepbrother returned my calls, and I've made plans for him to come and visit my family. Hopefully, after years of us not talking, he would understand why I felt the need to reach out and help me in preserving our father's legacy. I knew going into this project would not be easy. I knew that I would have to cut through a sea of red tape to even get a sliver of information, but I felt a sense of determination that I just couldn't ignore. Thinking back on things, I realized I was naive and I didn't understand the full scope of the conflict. School never did a good job of explaining the complexities of the war in Vietnam and the dichotomy of morality this conflict brought to man. As I've grown older and wiser, I've taken upon the task of better educating myself on what this war was about. What did we do there? Why was it so ignored? A lot of the things that I learned about him later in life suggested that he wasn't just any average American GI in Nam. A lot of what I learned while researching this conflict had to do with special military operations conducted outside of the normal scope of conventional warfare. But in war, nothing is simple, and Vietnam was unlike anything faced in the past. Guerrilla warfare and ambush tactics in the dense jungles and mountainous terrain of Vietnam were outside of the standard practices and doctrines of the military at the time. The scale of demand for specialized training in this environment to one division proved to be too much for the U.S. Army Ranger School. This led Major General William Westmoreland, the 101st Airborne Division commander, tasking Korean War Medal of Honor recipient Major Lewis Millett with establishing Recondo. Recondo, short for Reconnaissance Commando, were highly trained troops from the 101st who specialized in heavily armed small, long-range reconnaissance teams that patrolled deep into enemy territory. Training was brutal, as this was a condensed version of the Ranger course. However, this course stressed improvised demolitions, the art of patrolling and intelligence gathering, recognition of enemy vehicles, woodland survival, including a segment on snake handling, land navigation, rappelling, firearms skills of allied and enemy weapons, and aggressive hand-to-hand combat drills. Exercises involved in airborne insertion, followed by patrolling, ambush, anti-tank, and sabotage missions, escape and evasion techniques. These guys were essentially special forces without getting the title of special forces. I mean, the instructors of the course were Ranger trained 5th SF group. You know, the Green Berets. The course itself was 3 weeks in length, with 260 hours of classroom and field instruction that required a high level of physical fitness and concluded with an actual combat patrol to demonstrate the students' skills. The MACV Recondo course had a failure rate of 50%. Half of the soldiers that participated in this training couldn't do it. You had to be in peak physical and mental condition, tough as nails, relentless, probably a little bit crazy, but someone that could be pushed beyond their limits and keep fighting. Men with bravery and courage. This is what those men would need to stand the slightest chance of surviving in the bloodiest, most controversial wars in American history. Now, at this point, it's all kind of speculation. Like I said, I have very little information to work with in terms of official documents, but so many of the details and the anecdotes shared amongst my family are lining up. Recounting past conversations with Pops and seeing the traces of similarities between footage and photos of Recondo troops and subtle quirks in his personality and preferences. Along the way, I felt a growing sense of pride welling up inside me. As kids, we often don't comprehend who our parents are. We can't understand what led them to where they are now. And sometimes we don't get the chance to ask, or rather, we don't think about asking until it's too late. Just like us, our children don't know who we are. However, living in an age where technology has become a cornerstone of modern society, we have far greater opportunities to make that information accessible. Finding this information has taken a lot of time and effort, leaving me with few results. But I've also seen what perseverance and tenacity can yield. Like the training that Anthony had to endure, not giving up is the way to succeed. With some patience, I know I'll get some more answers. I'm sure my motivations for this video aren't unique. I know there's other people out there that feel that desire to get close to the ones that we've lost. Having that friend or relative that you wish was still around. Imagining that proud grandpa reliving his fatherhood right before your eyes. But I find comfort and closure learning about the odds and adversity Anthony had to overcome, the strength and resolve of his character. And in it, I found a motivation to continue my investigation, and in general, to never give up. This was never going to be easy, but that's why I did it.